Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaur Bhaktivinoda Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. We're going to continue where we left off yesterday. It wasn't it was Monday. We were talking about a very controversial topic, and controversial topics are interesting. Grabs our attention about the nature of Yogamaya and the fall of the jiva. I'm not sure we're actually going to continue talking about that, but we'll continue talking about Yogamaya. So, we have our harmonium up, ready for action. Welcome. A little too fast. Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Vijana Vallabha Girivara Dhari Gopijana Vallabha Girivara Dhari Shodhanandana Brajajana Ranjana Shodhanandana Brajajana Ranjana Yamuna Tira Vana Chari Jamuna Tira Vana Chari Radha Madhava Kunjabi Hari Radha Madhava Kunjabi Hari Vijana Vallabha Girivara Dhari Vijana Vallabha Girivara Dhari Sodhanandana Brajajana Ranjana Sodhanandana Brajajana Ranjana Jamuna Tira Vana Chari Jamuna Tira Vana Chari Radha Madhava Kunjabi Hari Radha Madhava Kunjabi Hari Radha Madhava Kunjabi Hari Radha Madhava Kunjabi Hari Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Krishna, Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, 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 Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Jai Go Premanande, Hare Hare Bo. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale Srimati Bhakti Vedanta Swami Namane. Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pachadine Nirvisesa Sunyavadi Paschatya. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Welcome everyone on this bright morning, sunny and cold in Alachua. We are reading from Srimad Bhagavatam 7, 8, 12. If you weren't here on Monday, you missed all the controversy. The eternal controversy, where we fell from. I think that topic is over now. We're on to bigger and better things. The translation, O most unfortunate Prahlad, you have always described a supreme being other than me, a supreme being who is above me, who is the control of everything, and who is all-pervading. But where is he? If he is everywhere, why is he not in this pillar in front of me? It was angry. Much more angry than I was acting. Purport. Demons sometimes declare to a devotee that they cannot accept the existence of God because they cannot see him. But what the demon, the asura, does not know is stated by the Lord himself in Bhagavad Gita 7:25. Naham prakasha sarvasya yogamaya samabhritaha. I am never manifest to the foolish and unintelligent. For them I am covered by yoga maya. The Lord is open to being seen by devotees, but non-devotees cannot see him. The qualification for seeing God is stated in Brahma Samhita. Premanjana charita bhakti vilochanena suddhaiva rishe. Premanjana charita bhakti vilochanena santasadaiva hridayeshu vilokayanti. A devotee who has developed a genuine love for Krishna can always see him everywhere, whereas a demon, not having clear understanding of the Supreme Lord, cannot see him. When Hiranyakashipu was threatening to kill Prahlad Maharaj, Prahlad certainly saw the column standing before him and his father and he saw that the Lord was present in the pillar to encourage him, not to fear his demoniac father's words. In other words, Hiranyakashipu was looking at the pillar. Prahlad said, Krishna's everywhere. Where is your God? He's everywhere. Is he in the floor? Is he in this? Is he in that pillar? And he's looking at the pillar, and Prahlad's saying, yeah, he's there. I can see him there. So he actually saw Nrsingadeva in the pillar. And of course, Hiranyakashipu did not see him, it's an interesting concept, right? One person can see something that another person cannot. One has spiritual vision. So the demon says, I cannot see God, therefore I don't believe him. So they're just like publicly admitting their disqualification. Yeah, you can't see him because you have no love. So if you say, I can't see him, you're admitting that you have no love for him. Okay, that makes sense. You can't see him. Premanjana charita bhakti vilochanena. You have no premanjana, ointment of love on your eye. Yeah, you can't see him. But don't ignorantly globally conclude that nobody can see him just because you can't. Because you're disqualified to see him, don't assume everyone is as disqualified as you are. So you're just admitting your disqualification by saying, I can't see him. So there, Prahlad is looking at the pillar. He's seeing Lord Nrsingadeva, and Hiranyakashipu is looking at the pillar, and he's seeing a pillar of marble. That's all. Nothing more, nothing less. The Lord was present to protect him, to protect Prahlad. And so he's like, Prahlad looks at the pillar, and Lord Nrsingadeva is going, must be doing something like that. Or probably not this, but like, or maybe this, like, or maybe like winking at Prahlad. Don't worry, I've got you covered. Don't worry about your father. You'll be okay. Prahlad's observation. Hiranyakashipu marked Prahlad's observation and asked him, where is your God? Prahlad replied, he is everywhere. Then Hiranyakashipu asked, why is he not in this pillar before me? Thus, in all circumstances, the devotee can always see the Supreme Lord, whereas the non-devotee cannot. So that's a statement, a beautiful statement by Bhaktisiddhanta that I mentioned before, one of my favorites. For the devotee, God exists everywhere. For the non-devotee, God exists nowhere. That kind of just puts it as succinctly and bluntly as possible. What's the difference between atheism and theism? Well, for the theist, he sees God everywhere, and for the atheist, he doesn't see God anywhere. He sees God nowhere. There's nowhere that he sees God. And for the theist, they're everywhere. There is nowhere. And for the theist, there is nowhere he doesn't see God. Yeah, that's another way of saying it. For the atheist, there's nowhere he sees God, and for the theist, there's nowhere he doesn't see God. Interesting, right? So we had elaborately spoken about this principle before, that even Krishna was walking on the earth amongst the people, and only some could understand him. Most people could not, which is, we would think, if Krishna came to your town or a theater near you, actually came to your town today and said he's going to be walking in Central Park at noontime so you can all meet him, you would kind of think it would be obvious that he's not ordinary. I mean, just having blue skin would kind of set him apart from everyone. But it's extraordinary that people did think he was special, but not that special. Yeah, this person has blue skin. That's amazing. Other than that, yeah, he's okay. He's kind of attractive, but nothing special. I mean, like, what's the big hullabaloo? So that's hard to understand. Well, maybe not hard to understand. It's hard to believe that people could see Krishna. Anyway, we fall asleep during japa and Krishna's in his name. So if somebody can see Krishna and just go, and we can see Krishna's holy name and go, then I think we can understand. It's possible. Because they're not actually seeing Krishna. That's the point. Because they can't see Krishna because they don't have qualifications. Like Ravana. Lord Chaitanya met a devotee, and the devotee fed him prasadam. I forget his name. Maybe someone remembers. And the devotee wouldn't eat. And Mahaprabhu said, "Why aren't you eating?" He said, "Well, I read the story that Ravana stole Sita. I'm too upset." And he said, "No, it was a Maya Sita. Ravana could not steal Sita. He couldn't see the real Sita. He couldn't touch the real Sita. It was not possible." So Sita, or Agni, took care of Sita and presented a Maya Sita. So the only thing Ravana could see was a material Sita. He couldn't see the spiritual Sita. He was just seeing material Sita. So that's the idea. That even Krishna is there or his associates are there, they can't really see them. They can only see material aspect. Like sometimes someone chants Hare Krishna and they can't really see the real form of the holy name. They only see material, only hear a material sound. So it has a material influence on them. So we're going to continue reading. The next thing we'll read is from Bhagavatam 8.543, purport. Actually, I don't know if it's a purport or verse. All learned men say that the 5 elements, eternal time, fruitive activity, the 3 modes of material nature, and the varieties produced by these modes are creations of Yoga Maya. This material world is therefore extremely difficult to understand. But those who are highly learned have rejected it. May the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is the controller of everything, be pleased with us. So this must be a verse. It's a prayer. It must be by the demigods. And the reason I put this in here was to reiterate this principle that everything is created by Yoga Maya. It's all creations of Krishna's internal potency. So we saw this earlier, where Prabhupada said everything in creation is a creation of Yoga Maya, an expansion of Krishna's energy. Krishna is the creator. He creates through various energies. They do the work. So the next is 8.12.21. In Bhagavad Gita 7.14, it is said, Davi yeshu gunamayi mama maya duratyaya. I'm using a different internet today. I'm paying for 2 different internet. Actually, 1 in the house and 2 in my office, because when one doesn't work, I have to rely on the other one. It's really crazy. The price you pay for living in the country. Bhagavad Gita, it is said, Davi yesha gunamayi mama maya duratyaya. The external potency of the Supreme Personality of Godhead is extremely strong. Indeed, everyone is fully captivated by her activities. Lord Shambhu, Shiva, was not to be captivated by the external potency. This is the story of the Mohini Murti. This is Krishna in the form of a woman, requested by Lord Shiva. Lord Shiva was curious to see Krishna in the form of women. From this story, it can be understood she was very beautiful, as you could imagine. Indeed, everyone is fully captivated by her activities, the activities of Maya. Lord Shambhu, Shiva, was not to be captivated by the external potency, but because Lord Vishnu wanted to captivate him also, he exhibited his internal potency to act the way that his external potency acts, to captivate ordinary living entities. So it looked like Lord Shiva is captivated by a woman, Everyone was captivated by this Mohini Murti, but Lord Shiva was not captivated by the material external energy, Maya. He was captivated by the internal potency. That's how, otherwise, he couldn't be captivated by the external potency. But it looked like he was just being captivated by the beauty of a woman. But it's not actually possible. So Krishna wanted to teach all the sadhus that you have to be careful, because woman for a man is very attractive, man for a woman is very attractive. And so he appeared in this form of a female, and by his internal potency, Lord Shiva became attracted. So everybody knows Lord Shiva is like the most sense-controlled. And so Prabhupada says that Krishna wanted to teach all. Well, so what happened? He was chasing Mohini Murti. That's what happened. And maybe we'll read this further. He was chasing her, and he was chasing her past where the housing project of the sadhus, where the sadhus lived. Not a housing project, but they're hermitages. And Prabhupada said that Mohini Murti wanted to show all the sadhus, you have to be careful, because even Lord Shiva is attracted to me. But he couldn't attract Lord Shiva by the external potency, so he used the internal potency to attract him. So Lord Shiva's attraction to this woman was really his attraction to Krishna, but it appeared like female attraction. But because Lord Vishnu wanted to captivate him also, he exhibited his internal potency to act that way, to act the way his external potency acts, to captivate ordinary living entities. Lord Vishnu can captivate anyone, even such a strong personality as Lord Shambhu. And certainly, if we're not captivated by Krishna, we'll be captivated by Maya. So the point is, we'll be captivated by someone. Everyone in Braj is captivated by the beauty of Krishna. And those only ones who aren't captivated are those who are visiting on the mission from Kamsa to try to kill Krishna. So they see Krishna, and they are there with a mission to kill him. So when they see him, they don't seem to have any change of heart or appreciate his beauty or anything. They don't think, how can I kill this boy? He's so beautiful. They just try to kill him. So they're also not seen. They're covered by Maya. Everyone else is covered by Yoga Maya. So the next verse is the 10th canto, first chapter 25. Well, since there's no more explanation of the Mohini Murti, but we could say a few more things. What can you say? Krishna came as a woman. How beautiful he must have been. And all the non-devotee men were going crazy, falling off their horses if they were sitting on a horse. So beautiful. Just mad, losing their minds. And here we have Lord Shiva trying to embrace this woman. Oh, you're so beautiful. That was Krishna's attraction. And so Rupa Goswami says something. It's a beautiful prayer. We can sometimes also recite it. Just like young boys are attracted to young girls attracted to young boys, may I be attracted to you in the same way. And then some devotees are thinking, yeah, probably the only form of Krishna I could really be attracted to is the Mohini Murti. Yeah, but if you're not careful, you'll be attracted to it in a material way. That would be a disaster. Okay, so we're going to now read from the 10th canto. It's the first chapter. This is interesting because I have selected lots of verses and purports from the 10th canto because in the 10th canto there's lots of discussion about Yoga Maya. And I found it interesting to study this birth lila through the lens of Yoga Maya. We're actually studying Yoga Maya, but there's so much about Krishna's birth in relation to Yogamaya, we get to study the birth also. So it's quite interesting. So this is the verse, 10:125. The potency of the Lord, known as Vishnu Maya, who is as good as the Supreme Personality of Godhead, will appear with Lord Krishna. The potency, acting in different capacities, captivates all the worlds. It's referring to Subhadra or Durga, both material and or Yogamaya. Captivates all the worlds, both material and spiritual. At the request of her master, she will appear with her different potencies in order to execute the work of the Lord. So that's, I think, a concise statement about Yogamaya. She captivates everyone in the spiritual world through her potency, which makes Krishna more attractive. And she captivates everyone in the material world through her external potency, which makes matter more attractive. So for the conditioned soul, matter is more attractive than spirit. That's unfortunate, isn't it? But that's Maya's job, to make matter attractive, make something dead appear attractive. Because everything we have that we're attracted to is dead. Even the bodies of the people we love are actually dead. I have this nice computer, but I'm very attracted to this computer. It's a really good computer, but it's dead. I'm attracted to this keyboard, very nice keyboard, but it's dead. We're attracted to things which are dead. I'm attracted to my body, but it's dead. I'm attracted to my wife, but it's dead. Everything's dead. So Maya's job is to attract us to dead matter, or attract us to spirit. And it all depends on us. Okay, let's read the purport, and then we'll look and see if you have some comments. Parasya Shaktir Vividai Vashruyate Swetashvataru Upanishad 6.8, as quoted in Madhya Lila 1365 purport. In the Vedas, it is said that the potencies of the Supreme Personality of Godhead are called by different names, such as Yoga Maya and Mahamaya. Ultimately, however, the Lord's potency is one, exactly as electric potency is one, although it can act both to cool and to heat. The Lord's potency acts in both the spiritual and material worlds. In the spiritual world, the Lord's potency works as Yogamaya, and in the material world, the same potency works as Mahamaya, exactly as electricity works in both a heater and a cooler. All right? My air conditioning that we got in the summer, it's now producing heat. The example is live and active in my office. The very same electricity is now in the same apparatus producing heat. So, when you go to the spiritual world, you get Yogamaya. In the material world, you get Mahamaya. But if you're Krishna conscious, you're going to also get Yogamaya in the material world. That is a really good deal, right? Even though you come here, we've messed up and we've come here. We've given up the shelter of Yogamaya. We come here, and Krishna gives us, we come under the shelter of Mahamaya, but Krishna gives us the chance to go under the shelter of Yogamaya, even in this world. That is fantastic. Take it up, everyone. Take up the offer. Okay, I'm going to see if you have anything to say. Okay, I'm going to light myself up just for you. Hold on. You can see me a little better? Yes? Okay. So I have to go back to the beginning so I don't miss anything. Welcome to all of you. So Shravaniya says, my husband and I were talking about this pastime this morning. Hiranyakashipu and Prahlad. For discussion's sake, I was siding with Hiranyakashipu. Perhaps he hated Vishnu so much because Vishnu had killed his brother and had never apologized to Hiranyakashipu. There might have been no one who could console him. Rather, he had to console the wives of Hiranyakashipu. For me, it seemed like Hiranyakashipu had a serious problem with forgiveness. To say the least. He had a lot of problems. Of course, it was a sensitive pastime. They were both devotees. Lord Krishna wanted to have a good fight. They had been cursed by the four Kumars, etc. Still, I'm wondering if the lack of... Well, Hiranyakashipu, he embodied every bad quality a human being could have. That's, he's one of the greatest demoniac entities ever. Maybe, not one of, maybe the. He was more powerful than Ravana. He was like the Adi Asura, the original Asura. So yeah, did he have a problem with forgiveness? He had a problem with a lot of things. That was probably not his worst problem. But yeah, he had, he was the personification of everything demoniac. So what are the demoniac qualities? Well, one way to ascertain them is look at the divine qualities and think what's the opposite. So tolerance is divine, intolerance. So therefore, intolerance, no forgiveness. So, yeah, Shravani, why don't you write an article and then you can entitle it, Hiranyakashipu had a forgiveness issue to deal with. That would be an interesting angle. So, still I'm wondering if the lack of forgiveness after something terrible happens may be the reason why people become atheists or agnostics, yeah. That could be one of the reasons, not only one. At best, and they can only become spiritual in an impersonalistic way. Yeah, people have issues with God because they're suffering. So they become agnostic or atheistic because they can't reconcile that if there's a God, all the suffering would go on. I have an uncle like this who became agnostic after his father and grandmother died, while his mother had a very serious depression. Yeah, I think that's common. Happened to my father also. All that happened within 2 years when he was a teenager. And a Catholic priest he talked with told him not to think about it too much. Any advice? I talk with him for hours once a week because he no longer has any close relatives, hardly any friends. Well, the only way to make sense of everything in this world is that everything's happening by a divine system of justice. And we sometimes I give the example of this, like you have a co-worker, really nice person, and one day the police come, or the federal police come and arrest him. And everybody's like saying to the police, why are you arresting him? He's like one of the nicest people in our office. And you say, he actually is part of the Colombian drug cartel. Not cartel in but cartel. And he's wanted for smuggling drugs, and we just found him. So you didn't know that. You just saw him from, let's say, a year ago. And in that year, he was wonderful. So when the police came for him, you thought, this is so unjust. Let him go. You have no right. And then they said, no, we do. He's got this record. So that's just how it works. And there's a record. And, if you look out in the world, there's a lot of terrible things going on, isn't it? So much abortion, infanticide, animal killing, abuse of children, abuse of spouses, and political people misusing power and so on. So if we understand there'll be a karmic reaction for that, and I think everyone feels or wants that to be true, that if someone does something to cause another person to suffer, that even if the courts don't capture them, we would like to think that there would be some universal justice, that a person would meet their fate. So there is. And, people say, but there's so much suffering. Yeah, but look at all the people who are causing suffering now. They will be the recipients of that suffering. And that's why you see so many people suffering, because there's so many people inflicting suffering. That's one way to explain it. I mean, another way to explain it is, would you rather live in a world where there's justice or injustice? So we would rather live in a world of justice. And so if there's no karmic law, then where would there be any justice? It would just be luck, haphazard, and some people are just more fortunate than others. But if there's justice, then no one will be punished who doesn't deserve it. Then no one will be rewarded who doesn't deserve it. So just because we can't see in this life everything someone has done doesn't mean they haven't done other good or bad things in the past. Right? Just one way of explaining it. Not the only way, but one way. Oh, Nadia says, attached to a Wi-Fi connection, which is also dead slow. Yeah, I'm attached to a dead Wi-Fi connection. But seeing the dead nature of material bodies, sometimes seeing them as a sack of blood, pus, etc., leads to fanaticism. Yeah, when you come, Nadia, when you come to Alachua, I will introduce you to my bag of blood, bile, mucus, stool, foul air, which I call my wife. That would be another Bhakta Burfi video, right? It is so interesting. Isn't it interesting? Sad, but interesting. How statements Prabhupada made with one intention have a much different consequence often for those who don't understand what he said. Isn't that? I think we talked about this a lot. And certain things can transpire within religious movements or religions or organizations can transpire that even, you just average anyone on the street, not that religious, will look at it and say, this is wrong. Why are you doing this? But we see things through some shastric injunction that obliviates common sense and reason. That sometimes happens. So we have to be on guard against that. Sometimes we take Shastra verbatim, and it's not meant to be taken verbatim, but it's meant to teach a principle. Like Prabhupada talks about brahmacharis with matted hair and wearing deerskin. The principle is they should dress simply, and they shouldn't worry about how their hair looks. The original idea of matted hair was you never take care of it. You don't comb it. You don't do anything. So if you have hair and you comb it, then there's all this, like, how do I look? Should I comb it this way or that way? But if you have matted hair, you don't comb it. You can't even comb it anyway. And so that's the principle. But then Prabhupada said, but the other principle is you shave your head. It's the same, not the other principle. The principle is you don't put energy into your appearance. The detail is matted hair or shaved head. For brahmachari, it's one or the other. So Prabhupada decided on the shaved head. Deer skin. Well, if you live in the forest, deer skin is good. It repels insects. And it's available, and you don't have to go to the mall to buy it. Keep it simple, sadhu. So that's the idea. So it doesn't mean now in Gurukul, all the boys are going to be wearing deer skin and matted locks. But the principle of dressing simply, that's definitely followed. So sometimes we don't get the principle, we get stuck on the detail. And then, what's wrong with our Gurukulas? They should be having matted locks. It's right here in the Bhagavatam. Why are they wearing dhoti kurta? They should be wearing deerskin. It's right here in the Bhagavatam. Well, Prabhu, it's not actually what Prabhupada meant. It's a principle. No, you're unfaithful to Prabhupada. So you get things like this. Obviously, we've never seen that happening in ISKCON. I think that's obvious. And Prabhupada himself recommended that the boys shave their head. But he did say that that's an option, matted locks. But I didn't think he felt it may be misunderstood by the public. Or for whatever reason, he decided better to be clean shaven. So this is a problem. This is a problem for all of us. Potentially, this is a problem. To not understand when Prabhupada says something, what he intended us to understand, what he intended us to take away. And sometimes we take away something which was not his intention. He can't be responsible for how we misunderstand. That's our responsibility. But sometimes we misunderstand. Yeah. Right, yeah. So, you study Prabhupada's books, you can see that some things he said could really be taken in the wrong way and applied in ways that would be hurtful to devotees, to the public, to oneself, or applied in ways that would be immoral even. Yes. So, we have to be careful. We have a PS now about Shavani's uncle, agnostic uncle. My uncle lives 500 kilometers away, so I cannot give him prasadam on a regular basis. Sending it by mail would be a problem because he still works and the mailman comes when he is at work. So I don't want to inconvenience him by making him go to the post office. Yeah, it's worth inconvenience. For prasadam, it's worth it. Just send him prasadam that lasts a long time. If it's got a lot of sugar or honey in it, that'll preserve it. A few months back, I was praying to Krishna to keep me in his spiritual energy. Later that day, came across a purport which said something like, when you're suffering, it means you're in spiritual energy. I was happy and sad at the same time. I thought, suffering means material energy. Yeah, well, it depends on the suffering and how the suffering comes. Sometimes suffering just comes. You didn't call it up and it just comes. And sometimes suffering comes as a result of us doing something drastically wrong. So yes, and suffering comes from karma for sure. At least we can say this, Ravani, if the suffering causes you to be more Krishna conscious, then what was said here is suffering is you're in the spiritual energy. Yeah. I mean, it's like if you had a choice to be happy or suffer, probably safer to suffer, although no one would really want to choose that, but probably safer for us to suffer. What do you think? More of a chance of being Krishna conscious if we suffer. All right, I'm being quoted here, right? Or did I say this? You said this. The only way to make sense, this is Vikash, the only way to make sense of things in the world is to realize that everything is happening by a divine sense of justice. Yeah. Sometimes it's difficult to understand. But one thing we understand is that anyone who's chosen to come to this world is in a precarious situation because you never know what will happen. So Nadia says, sometimes if you put out the karma card to an atheist like him, they get even more angry towards God, especially when it comes to explaining why their parents suffered and such. Yeah, of course. Well, not only that, you don't even have to say karma and God. You just have to say God, and they get angry. Or you just have to say karma, and they get angry. Yeah, God makes atheists, some of them, really angry. How can there be a God if there's suffering? Yeah, it's a reasonable argument. But does a parent ever punish a child for the child's well-being? Of course. And we wouldn't say, well, if this person is punishing this child, they couldn't be their parent. They must be somebody who doesn't know them and doesn't like them. That, but nobody would say that. Everybody would understand. No, it's their parent. They're punishing them because they did something wrong, and they have to teach them a lesson. So that's how Krishna teaches us lessons. But the thing is, atheism it's a certain temperament, and some people, they just there's nothing you can say that's going to convince them. A lot of times, these arguments against atheists are really just to increase our own faith. Atheists do not like God. What kind of suffering is spiritual? Anything that helps you become Krishna conscious. Material suffering, anything that helps you. Anything that causes you to turn away from Krishna consciousness. I think Prabhupada was referring to the suffering you undergo in trying to be Krishna conscious. That's spiritual suffering, like the austerity you undergo, or any the difficulties you undertake in service, or the difficulties you undertake in maintaining good sadhana. And then sometimes you suffer, and so it's not a material suffering, a karmic reaction suffering. So that's another aspect of this. We said last night, we quoted Prabhupada. Prabhupada was asked, what makes you happy? And he said, when I see you struggling, I'm happy. So, similar idea. Spiritual suffering is really the suffering of not being Krishna conscious and having difficulty becoming Krishna conscious. That's spiritual suffering. Material suffering is a consequence of karma. Spiritual suffering is a consequence of your desire to be Krishna conscious. But still, any kind of suffering that comes to you can be spiritualized. Or, it can potentially be spiritual, like Krishna is arranging a situation, so we say, well, it's spiritual suffering, but you have to take it in a way that helps you in your Krishna consciousness to finalize it as spiritual suffering. Maybe intended that way, but not taken that way. Kelly says, in reply to Nadia, I've come across this myself, explaining karma to non-devotees, and some do get frustrated. Great, so bad things are happening to me because I deserve it. I must be worthless. Yeah. That's an example of what we're talking about. That you have one concept, gets filtered through your brain, and you you understand it in a different way. Yeah. The person who thinks they're worthless, probably anything you tell them about themselves, they would think they're worthless. Yeah. So it doesn't really have to do with the particulars of what you're saying. Well, I mean, should the world be managed in a way that you do wrong things and there's no penalty? Is that what this person is saying? You commit crimes and you shouldn't pay for them? I mean, what are they saying? You know, we caught you stealing a candy bar. We're taking you to jail. Oh, I must be worthless. No, I don't know if you're worthless or not, but I know you're a thief. That much I know. If you think you're worthless for stealing a candy bar, that's your subjective opinion of yourself. We just called you a thief and caught you red-handed. So, yeah, it's interesting, you know, misunderstanding and assumption and expectations are all things which can complicate people's ability to understand our philosophy. So, what to do? What to do? Universal justice through the cosmic police force. All right. Try that one on. This one teacher said something interesting. He said, I believe in karma because I would like to see a just world. And karma is the only thing that would explain a just world. If there's no karma, it's not a just world. I would like to think that if I do the right thing, then I would be rewarded. If I do the wrong thing or others do the wrong thing, we would be punished. I'd like to live in a world like that. You know, I mean, you could explain that to people, say, wouldn't you like to live in a world where good people are rewarded for what they do and bad people are punished? Unless they're a bad person, they probably would say, yeah. And say, well, that's what karma is. That's all karma is. It's just when it happens to you, it's hard to accept it. But that's all karma is. And so, why would you believe karma? Because you want to believe that that's how the world is. You want to believe in a just world. You want to believe in a just God and a just world. So, if that's what you want to believe in, then you would accept karma. And that's why people believe in anything, because not anything, but people believe, if they believe in something that has no called proof, apparently not observable data, which is acceptable to certain scientific rigors, it doesn't pass the scrutiny of certain scientific methods. But that's why people would believe something that perhaps couldn't be scientifically demonstrated, at least not demonstrated scientifically according to the rules of their game. But why would they believe it? Because that's the way they would like to see the world. And so a lot of things we believe that we can't see are because that's how we would like the world to be. That makes sense to us. So we believe it. And that's why people believe in karma, because it makes sense to them. Does that make sense? So these are all ideas you could use to explain to people. Nadia says, Prabhupada's teachings are very often taken the wrong way. They are always meant to enlighten us, not make us fanatics. Yes, it's interesting. Yeah. The teachings can cause all kinds of problems, unintended problems. Christy says, these days I've been reading some history books for work. And they reminded me of how, for example, in the 1600s, it was actually seen honorable to worship God and dedicate all the fruits of your activities to Him, or go on pilgrimages. But now, when distributing books, I notice a lot of people saying, I don't have time for this, or comment, we should get a real job. made me think how now we have more commodities but less faith than in the past. Yeah, it's the consequence of materialism. The mass of people don't seem to notice that materialism is actually the cause of all evils when you boil things down and analyze it. Yeah. There's a movie that was made in 2008, and I will tell you the name of it in a moment. It's called Expelled. Let me see. No intelligence allowed. Expelled, no intelligence allowed. And I just saw, the movie was recommended to me. You may be of interest. I just saw the trailer. Expelled, no intelligence allowed. And it's about people who spoke out against Darwinian evolution. People who said that the modern theories do not explain Darwinism or neo-Darwinism. There's no explanation, proper explanation of consciousness. There's no proper explanation of the origin of the universe. The only thing that explains it is intelligent design. And so what I saw so far in the trailer were interviews with people who lost their jobs, who were in the academic world, who lost their jobs for explaining that there must be some intelligent designer. So he was saying that, it's just a movie to show what is the status quo and to show how you'll be persecuted for having any other idea. And what's the status quo? Evolution. Things happen by chance. So you can check that out. It's quite interesting. It gives you a kind of an update of what's going on in the world and people's minds and the minds of scientists. So I have to get back to all of you. Okay, we're back. Krishna Karshani says, every devotee is going through the fanatic time called the Utsahanmayi. We should not take that seriously. What such new beginners say or do, unless they completely mess up the movement. The problem is when someone is a devotee for a long time. Yeah, that's a good point. You expect it, right, amongst a younger devotee, but you don't expect it. The problem is when someone is a devotee for a long time, but is still a fanatic, yeah. If a young devotee is a fanatic, it's kind of like, yeah, that's normal. I was like that also. You'll grow out of it, Prabhu. Just don't worry. You'll grow out of it. You'll fall in Maya like we all did. You'll stop getting up in the morning. Stop chanting Shayura Vijaya before Prasadam. You'll forget to pay obeisances before you go to bed. Yeah, you'll end up like us. Don't worry. We don't say that, and we maybe don't think that out loud, but somewhere in our mind we kind of think, yeah, you'll level off at some point, right? Okay. Good point, Krishna Karshani. Gopinath is thinking about prasadam cookies. I don't know what that's in relation to. Prasadam cookies. Or he's telling Nadia, go get some prasadam cookies. Or give them, give the atheist prasadam cookies. Yeah, I got it, yeah. When all arguments fail, give them prasadam cookies. That's it. So we're talking about suffering, and Satyarupa says, well, that would be austerity or tolerance, not suffering. Prabhupada defines austerity as suffering for spiritual advancement. No, he defines it as voluntary suffering for the case of spiritual advancement. That's austerity. So it is, austerity is suffering. If it's actually austerity. Real austerity is suffering. Okay. We have something from Shailavasini. Shailavasini. Hare Krishna, welcome. I wanted to ask, why do the mass of human beings like to blame the imaginary Satan for their sinful behaviors? I always knew Satan was it's not real since I was a child, and that he was made up in the chapter of the Bible that talks about him. It's really talking about the mind. Oh, that's nice. You grew up in an advanced Christian denomination, especially in Hebrew. So why he is always blamed, and why can't they see he is not real? Oh, they definitely think he's real. It is almost like saying Jesus took contract for people's sinful behavior. Tendency to blame is very strong. And when I have a theory, and if I was 25 and in university, I might pick this as my PhD. I've picked about 5 PhD topics this year, if you've noticed in my classes. I've picked PhD topics. And this could be one interesting one, this topic. Which would be the question you're asking. Why? Here's my theory. And you see seeds of this in ISKCON. You look at the life of Jesus and you say, I couldn't do that. Then you look at his teachings and you try to follow them, and after trying you say, I tried but I can't. So you're thinking, okay, he set an example we can't follow. He gave us teachings we can't follow, but he's most merciful. He's come to save us. So you put 2 and 2 together and you come up with 5, and here's the 5. That he didn't expect us to follow those teachings. He just expected us to try as best we could. And wherever we lack, he makes that up because we can't achieve God by our own effort. And so it's only by his mercy. So, I can't be responsible for what the devil makes me do because the devil is very strong. Something like that. I can't be responsible. I cannot be responsible for what the devil makes me do. But Jesus will forgive me because I can't be responsible for what the devil makes me do, so Jesus will forgive me. So that's my theory, that it was born out of an inability to follow, over time, to follow the teachings of Jesus. And then they had to rationalize the philosophy to make sense around the idea, well, nobody except a few rare monks, sadhus, is able to follow what he said, and nobody could follow his life example well. So he couldn't have expected that we, lowly people, would be able to follow all this. So that's my theory of how they put it together. Because if you fall short in any Christian church, except a few rare churches, if you fall short of the Christian ideal, you still go to heaven because you're just human. And you're still forgiven. I'm not perfect, I'm forgiven. That's the idea. Right? Not perfect, but forgiven. That's not an academic, statistical, researched historian's perspective. It's just my view of history, that how could you go to something so pure and end up with a philosophy that nobody can follow what Jesus taught perfectly, because we're not perfect. So, whatever gap is there between your effort and your result, he'll make up the difference. So there is some truth to that. But we have that philosophy also, but our threshold is higher. You have to follow this, this, and this, and then this gap here, he'll fill it up. But if you're down here, the gap's too big to fill. But they have their threshold way too low. So then that philosophy doesn't work anymore. Krishna's merciful. If I fall, he'll make up for it. Yeah, but how low and how often? And don't build a philosophy around it, So it's interesting because if you look at our philosophy, you'll see that parallel that I'm not qualified, but by the mercy, I'll become qualified. You see that parallel, right? And if you fall, Krishna forgives you and you get back up. So that's there also in our philosophy, but it wasn't enshrined as a fundamental principle. In fact, that principle of Christianity, that you're saved in spite of your continual sinning, that is enshrined in our philosophy as the ninth offense, or the seventh offense to the holy name, which would be part of my thesis, which would say that Christianity has established as a fundamental principle the seventh offense to the holy name, which is to commit sin on the strength of chanting. Just go to Jesus and pray for forgiveness. And Prabhupada said, you could pray to God for forgiveness, but it's not shrined within a philosophy that it's okay. That it's like a fundamental principle of our religion, that you're sinful and you can only be saved by the mercy of Jesus, and you'll never be perfect. Well, if I never be perfect, why should I try? Does that make sense? Shailavasini? It's interesting, isn't it? Did you all catch that? Isn't that interesting? The seventh offense is to commit sin on the strength of chanting. So Krishna might say, well, I don't, consciously commit sin. I think some do. They know something's sinful. They just say, I can't follow it. I'm too weak. Jesus understands. This has also entered our movement. Sometimes devotees do something sinful, and they say, Prabhupada understands. And I don't deny that he does understand, but he understands you're weak, he understands you're trying. That's if you're trying, but if you give up trying and just say, well, Prabhupada understands I'm weak, so, I can't control myself, but he understands. That's taking it to the border of Christianity, which then becomes a really useless philosophy, because they have this principle which kind of neutralizes everything Jesus said and stood for. At least they don't think that way or wouldn't preach that way, but in reality, that's what's happening. Isn't it? Is it not? Is it not? Yeah. So, I'm very sinful, I'm very fallen, Prabhupada understands, he forgives me. Okay. At some point, we can say Prabhupada understands it, but we have to say, I can't be forgiven for this, continually committing this sin and not improving myself. At some point, I have to stop it. So otherwise, we become Christianity. Now, one of the things we see in Krishna consciousness is as a devotee matures, he's able to follow better. But if you have a philosophy that says you don't have to follow better because you'll be forgiven, then why would anyone really try? Most people would think it's so difficult to try to be more elevated. Let me just not put myself in stress and just do what I can do. Right? So that's the danger. Nobody can follow what Prabhupada said. It's too hard. Let's get real, As the decades go on, it's becoming harder to follow. So Prabhupada understands. To some degree, there's some truth, but there's no evidence that Prabhupada was okay with people not following. You know what's really interesting? I don't want to make anybody feel guilty. I just saw this video. It was so funny. Konteya Prabhu was talking about Gurukula to leaders. He said, like, well, how many Gurukuls do we have in India? And they said, maybe 7. How many temples do we have? They said, 250. He said, 250 temples, only 7 schools. Then he said, but I don't want to make you guilty. I don't want to make you feel guilty. And then he said, actually, I want to make you feel I don't want to make you feel guilty. I want to make you feel very guilty. So what I say next could make some people feel guilty, but I want to say it because it's true. I was reading the other day something that we have discussed often, 16 Rounds, 4 Principles. And I forget how Prabhupada said it, but he said something to the effect that these 16 rounds and following these 4 principles, you'll go back to Godhead. So we could say, well, that's the price of going back to Godhead. That's what it cost. So you can't bargain on that price because it's already on sale. That's the best price you're going to get. So when I was reading it, I was thinking, well, it's not 12 rounds and 4 principles, or 16 rounds and 3 principles, or 8 rounds and 5 principles. It's 16 rounds and 4 principles. That's the price. That's what you have to pay. So no matter how we slice the bread, that's the price. And so I was thinking, okay, if I'm sincere in Krishna consciousness and I want to go back to Godhead and I want to serve my spiritual master, serve Prabhupada, and Prabhupada said 16 rounds and 4 principles, that's the price, then I should be trying to collect my capital to pay that price. Maybe today I can't pay it. Maybe today I can, maybe tomorrow I can't. But in the overall scheme of things, in the long run or the short run, sooner the better, if not now, I should be trying to do that because that's what I need to go back to Godhead. Those are the conditions that Prabhupada made. So thinking I can go back to Godhead and compromise those conditions, but that's not true because Prabhupada never said that. Right? Correct? So meditate on that. Okay, this. If you do this, you get to go back to Godhead. Okay. So it has to be 16 rounds and 4 principles. That's the requirement, generally. There may be exceptions here or there, although Prabhupada never said publicly there were exceptions. Publicly, he always said, if you do this, you'll go back to Godhead. Okay, that's what I have to do. So then if I do 3 principles in 16 rounds or 4 principles in 12 rounds, then I have to ask, is that enough? Say, well, this is, it's like you're buying a shirt and it's $25 and you're going up the cash register. And I said, I know it says 25. Could I give you 20? I'm going to say, no, it's 25. They'll just go, do you want the shirt or not? It's 25. You want to go back to Godhead or don't you? It's 16 rounds, 4 principles. Like that's just the price. Nobody can lower the price. That's the price. And you might say, but in the Gaudiya Math, yeah, and in the Gaudiya Math they say it takes you 3 lives to go back to Godhead. So Prabhupada's saying, let's do it in 1 life. Start with 16 and 4 principles. We'll get it over in this lifetime. So I think that's important. Don't you think that's important? To understand, accept. Right? So that's something to meditate on. I hope that doesn't make you feel guilty. It's just, it's something. It's something we have to consider, because it is. And maybe today's not the day I can do it. All right, don't have a heart attack. Don't get the rope out and hang yourself. Don't get out a hammer and hammer yourself in the head. Don't get boxing gloves and start punching yourself. But understand the conceptual framework And then work, if you can't do it now, work towards it, because that's the price. Okay, I want to buy this guitar. It's $2,500. It's actually the guitar I had before I became a devotee. It's worth $2,500 now. I paid $250 for it. It's worth $2,500 now. So let's say I want to buy the guitar, but I only have $1,200. So, okay, I want to buy that guitar. I only have $1,200. Okay, but I'm going to keep that $1,200 in the bank, and I'm going to keep it there until I get the $2,500. So it's like, I want Krishna consciousness. That's the guitar. This is the price. I don't have the money yet. Okay, well, I'm working on getting the money. Something like that. Don't give up. Keep working. Okay. We have a message about Darwin from Christe. Interesting thing about Darwin is he didn't even believe his own theory, apparently. From what I read that he said, it sure looked like he didn't. It sure looked like he said this is like something like this theory is just an idea that I was fooling with, and it's really doesn't really make that much sense. That's what he said, and everybody took it so seriously. In Darwin's theory, there is a missing final link between how monkeys became human. He just took a wild guess, and it made sense to people. Many articles started being published, but they are conspiracy theories. We'll definitely watch the movie. Prabhupada has spoken about Darwin, and he said, in the Puranas it said, the verse Nava Lakshani, there's 9 lakhs of the species, and, so many lakhs of the species. And he said Darwin took these ideas from the Vedas and created his own theory. Interesting, right? But now you have a world scientific community based on a theory that the author of the theory was just like throwing out for fun. To see, just try to make sense of something. Before that time, or before a certain time, I don't know exactly when, ideas like Darwin would have been laughed at, because all the great philosophers and scientists were theists. And what is really amazing, which shows an extreme degree of ignorance, is that there are religious authorities who say, well, that's how God created. Quote, evolutionary theory, well, that's how God created. But evolutionary theory is chance. God doesn't create by chance. Nothing happens by chance in God's creation. So, Krishna Karshani says, when I explain to non-devotees how the law of karma works, they often ask, what is the use of punishment if we don't know what we did to deserve for punishment we got? I'm wondering why Krishna is not letting living entities to know, because if they remember, they'd be we'd need a lot more mental hospitals. Why doesn't he let them remember what they did deserve for what they're getting? If we all know what we did in the past, maybe, I tell you, okay, Krishna Karshani, in the past you were like Al Capone, the worst person in the world. You go, that's impossible, I wasn't Al Capone. Like, they're going to believe that also? It would be easier for all of us to digest our present karma. I have a friend who has very bad karma and is suffering in this life. She did regression and she realized she deserved for suffering she's getting, The Prabhupada said, the difficulty in remembering your past life is if you're in a lower position now than you were in the past, it could be really difficult. I mean, let's say you're just an ordinary person struggling. You're not that smart, not that beautiful, you don't have much money, not that capable. In your last life, you learn that you were very rich, very capable, and so on. Prabhupada said it would be hard to live this life knowing that. But there is a sense of learning that goes on subconsciously. The answer to that question, also the way I see it, is there's a law, and you read, this is the law and this is the consequence. So to learn that law, you don't have to break the law. You just have to know that it exists. And then you see other people who've been punished for breaking the law, and then you understand, oh, that's what happens. So you go to jail and you're told, this is for this crime in your past life. But I don't remember my past life. Well, we're going to tell you. You just notice that everyone who's suffering like you has done the same thing. And there are people doing it now, and they will suffer also. So you're learning. It's theoretical. Okay, you're suffering because you did this or that. It's theoretical, but you can still learn. And you can still see other people suffering for doing those things. That makes sense? I don't know. I'm a little tired. I don't know if that made sense. Are you more confused now than when I began speaking? I hear that if I do this, I will suffer. Or I hear that I'm suffering because I did that. Okay. I don't have to experience it, but I can learn that that's the cause of my suffering, so I don't do it again. And then some people, some devotees I know, they have, when they're suffering, they have some sense that I did this to someone else, now they're doing it to me. Enemies in our past life, something like someone's attacking you, and you go to the astrologer and he says, oh, you were enemies in your past life. It's just continuing. But I can see two people as enemies and think, oh, they have some karma, they have some past together. I don't have to remember it, but I can understand it. Try to understand what caused it, right? So now, Shaila Vasini says, I was born, raised Catholic. From the age of 12, I started to ask them questions about who I am and why I came from, what happened, and where I came from, who I am and where I've came from, and what happens after death, who is Jehovah, etc. But they used to get upset with me, and I left and never went back. Yeah, I don't know if I heard this story from you, but I've heard this story before. Like, I think it was another devotee. They're Jehovah's Witness or Catholic Church or whatever. And they keep asking these questions, and the priest is like, stop asking all these questions. Like we say, ask more questions, because we have the answers. Apparently they don't like all these questions because they don't have a good answer. Like, it's kind of like asking a devotee, do we come from Brahman or did we fall from Vaikuntha? Why do you have to ask that question? So when, you ask some Christians, where did I come from? Why am I suffering? And like, why do you have to ask that question? Here, everyone got upset with me when I asked the questions I asked. Sometimes it's very hard to preach to people with that mindset of not knowing anything. It's only when I came to Krishna consciousness everything made sense. My family thinks something is wrong with me. Yeah, that's good that they think something's wrong with you. If they didn't think something's wrong with you, that would be a bad sign. It means you'd be like them, with the material conception of religion. So, Shravanita says, regarding Christianity versus Krishna consciousness, I had so much trouble getting rid of a certain sin when I was a practicing Catholic. And the priest would say, We are all humans. But my first 3-hour kirtan with Indraduma Swami, and I had no desire to do that again for months. This convinced me about Krishna. That's an amazing story. Later, whenever I didn't chant properly, I had the same problem, so I resolved to deepen my hearing and chanting. Yeah, that's a good point. You know, Father, I sinned, I stole a candy bar. Okay, 4 rounds. If 4 rounds doesn't work on your stealing propensity, 8. If 8 doesn't work, 12. 12 doesn't work, 16. 16 doesn't work, 25. At least we have a process that purifies them. Yes. Oh, we have more. Oh my God. Krishna says, so many people took ideas from the Vedas and molded them down according to their perception. Yeah. Even Hitler took ideas. Took this Aryan idea. Thought the Germans were Aryans, superior class. Prabhupada said Aryans are everywhere around the world. People who follow the Vedas are Aryans. I guess that's why Prabhupada didn't get along with the scientists. Yeah. He got along with the scientists who were religious. But we also sometimes do the same as devotees. Yeah. For me, it sort of seems that Darwinian evolution is sort of like learning to read a clock and coming to the conclusion that the clock is the cause of time, rather than just describing it. It identifies changes which are visible, but misidentifies the Seymour, and this doesn't, my internet is, which are visible, misidentifies the cause. Well, it's so interesting if you study history and how materialism had ushered in as materialism increased, so did atheism or agnosticism. And so it's so interesting because amongst the theistic science, so they would study science and discover laws of nature and so forth. It was always in a theistic context. This proves the, intelligence of God and so forth. And then, as post-industrial revolution, materialism, then everything they were discovering was now put within a atheistic context. And this proves there's no God, and that proves there's no God. And it doesn't prove there's no God, but that's what you want to prove. So that's what you say. And you just this denial of intelligent design, in the academic world, in the scientific world, it's just, what did Prabhupada, obstinate? It's just being obstinate, because it's like, the party's over if God exists, I can't control the universe. It's a real reluctance, resistance. Shalavasini says, I was forced to look at Jesus on the cross, and I used to ask as a child, how can people look at him and not cry? He's suffering on there. We should do everything he says to make him happy, but no one could understand. Wow. But that would make a good movie. The little kid who's like preaching to the parents and everyone's saying, be quiet, you don't know what you're talking about. Just like I told them, Jehovah, I always knew it, and no one believed me. I was so happy when I came to Krishna consciousness. Everything was crystal clear. Why is it so hard for people to accept Krishna as he's looking like a human being? Because they eat too much meat, that's why. They've been misguided. I mean, why? The priests drink wine. The priests have to, so many priests have become alcoholics, and, it's obviously, how do you understand? Yeah, something so simple. So I have a story. We can end with the story. You'll like this story. Oh, then Gopinath, you'll like this story. And Shaila Vasini, you'll like this story. So Prabhupada went to Mexico, and I think this was the first time, I don't know, it couldn't have been the first time Prabhupada saw this, but I guess in the Catholic religion, it's common to have the crucifix on your wall or placed in a noticeable place, right? So Prabhupada was staying at a home, and there was a crucifix, and he saw that. And he said, he was just saying, this isn't bad, not good. And he said, how would you like to have a picture of your spiritual master being crucified? Like, you wouldn't. If that ever happened, that's not something you'd want to remember. But they gave a significance to it, as that him being killed, he was dying for your sins. Of course, we understand the theology is that the Guru does not have to die to accept your sins. You just have to surrender to him. So, to say he died on the cross for our sins, at least it doesn't equate with Vaishnava philosophy. And there's nowhere where we say a saint has to become a martyr so we can become free from karma. It's not like that. Okay, we're going to end. Hare Krishna. Jai Prabhupada. All the best. Be good. Don't do anything I wouldn't do. And Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Nice seeing all of you. Go Premanandi, Hari Hari Bol. Now I will try to end the video with this terrible internet connection. We will see if it actually works. Yeah, we're going to try again. I know not what is going on with the bad video, with the bad connection.